I want to do. Did you hear that?
Yes, and I'm going to press
Okay.
OK.
Okay. Okay, so welcome back to Brazen Maven Society. Sasha will be joining us hopefully a little later. She is stuck in LA traffic. So we have a wonderful guest today. Her name is MaryAnn Lentini, and she is a social worker. And and many other things actually. And I'll let you explain everything you do because it is so much. But you have spent years working closely with families during a very emotional but important and sacred time of life, which is the end. It's hospice, and you've helped them navigate that journey with comfort, dignity, and respect. And you have many years of experience doing that, and so that's why I was very interested when Sasha talked about bringing you on to discuss this. I know you're going to bring a lot of your personal and professional expertise, and then we're just going to talk about kind of what hospice is and what the process is, and really helping people understand how individual it is, and when it should be considered, and kind of demystifying it and giving
Sure.
everyone some real life examples.
That
So
sounds
welcome
great.
to the Brazen Maven Society, and you're on here because you are a Brazen Maven.
I love
So
that. Thank
yes.
you very much for that introduction, Gabrielle. It's a pleasure to be here. And this is a topic very, very close to my heart, only because there are so many wonderful resources that we have in our community. But the problem I see with hospice, especially, is the fact that it still, over all these years, has this stigma attached to it. And we've heard time and time again how many families and clients, patients would benefit from hospice, but are signed on to hospice at such a late stage. The median amount of time in the United States that a client is actually on hospice is only 2 weeks.
Mm.
And when you think of all the benefits of hospice that can be done more out there for 6 months, the client on 2 weeks of hospice isn't really getting very much at all. And they will offer, for example, bereavement services for 13 months following the loss, but they're not getting the benefit of hospice. So let's back
So
up a little. Go ahead.
yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
maybe just as a very experienced person with this, why don't we start by just letting everyone know, just understanding hospice, number one, what it is
Mm-hmm.
and the benefits, and then maybe when a family should start looking at this as an option and why.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So we have what I like to call the umbrella of hospice.
Mhm.
And hospice is basically services that are provided to the patient, the client, and their family members, usually with a 6-month prognosis. But sometime back, maybe 15 years now, maybe 20, they realized that there were clients that could benefit from hospice who were not quite qualified for the hospice benefit with a 6-month prognosis. And palliative care was introduced, which I feel is under the umbrella of hospice. So I'm going to explain both because this way people will understand when I should ask for hospice, what questions to ask, etc.
Good.
So hospice, first of all, is a Medicare covered benefit, 100%, as we speak today. I always preface that because things
You
change
never know,
and you
right?
never know.
Oh, I'm
Hospice,
hold on one second. I'm going to
Sure.
admit Sasha real quickly.
Oh, good.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. She was faster than I thought.
Okay, great.
So hold on. Yay. Okay. All right. Um, is she there?
I'm
Hello?
here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay,
I'm
so
trying
we
to get my, there we go.
there you
Hi.
are. Hi. Okay, so I and I'm so sorry because I just interrupted MaryAnn, but I wanted you to because I know you were making all these valiant efforts to join. But I did interrupt her. We were just in the process of she's explaining that hospice is a Medicare benefit. And that covers 100% for now. And we were talking about, yeah, she always prefaces that because things do change. And
Oh,
so, MaryAnn, if you remember
Yes,
where
no
you were.
problem.
Okay.
No
Okay.
problem.
thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. It's great to see you, Sasha.
You too.
So, what hospice provides the client is a skilled nurse to come out to either the home, or hospice can be provided in a facility, such as an nursing home or a assisted living facility. We used to call them board and cares for those who remember the old terms.
Yes.
And that person, that nurse, has a direct link with their physician medical director for any kind of questions that may come during the care under
Mhm.
hospice.
Mhm.
So they also provide someone, a home health aide, to provide personal care, hygiene care, because many clients on hospice might be bedbound, no longer able to get up and shower themselves, or even with the assist of a caregiver.
Mhm.
And they are professionals that know how to provide hygiene care with dignity. It's also including the safety of the client and the safety of the caregiver. Because so many times caregivers are like, I can do that. And the next thing you know, two of them fall on the floor, unfortunately. They also provide spiritual support. So you can have clergy. There are some hospices that can actually bring a rabbi in and provide that spiritual support, not only to the patient, but also to the family members. They provide a social worker. A social worker can help with, for example, asking those difficult questions that may be the elephant in the room, but nobody has brought it up. For example, do you have pre-need funeral arrangements? Do you need help with contacting family directly and bringing them in to say your goodbyes? Do you want, for example, to bring in somebody to do some type of legacy video? Who was I? What did I do? These are things that are lost once the patient passes, that the family thinks, oh, I should have done that. But the professionals bring that information into the situation so that we can have those beautiful moments together videotaped.
Right.
And hospice also can bring in specialties like music therapy. They can bring in aromatherapy. They can bring in what we call alternative means to keep the client comfortable, to keep the family calm.
Mhm.
That's why I say it's so unfortunate that so many clients are signed on the last 2 weeks, because we no sooner introduce all these people and the patient passes away.
Right. Mhm.
So now backing up, what I was saying about palliative care, I like to look at it as another way of bringing in hospice to families and to a client who may not be ready to hear the hospice word.
Right.
Palliative care can provide care to the client in a non-aggressive way. We're not out to actually cure the patient anymore, but we are there to treat the patient and provide services to keep them comfortable. And the reason why, especially in the United States, palliative care was introduced was because we had a lot of patients, young patients with an AIDS diagnosis that did not have a 6-month prognosis. They may
I
have
didn't
had,
know that.
yes,
Okay.
yes. They may have had a year, 2 years, 5 years to live,
Mhm.
and they needed the benefit of hospice, but they didn't have that 6-month prognosis. And physicians were saying, we really need to service this population, but we
Mhm.
don't want to be in this, what I call uh, insurance quandary about 6 months or less.
Right.
So palliative care can be brought in to help patients, clients, family members with a client that does not have end of life within 6 months. For example, we can treat a client who may have, unfortunately, a tumor on their spine with a lot of pain involved. We can treat that tumor to perhaps shrink it to keep the client out of pain. That can be provided under palliative care. We now can provide therapies to a patient during palliative care. And by therapies, I mean even physical therapy to keep the client from muscle atrophy, which can be very, very painful for a client that's no longer ambulating. So I look at it as a way of introducing care and dignity towards the end of life with a longer prognosis. And many, many of my clients, for example, are more receptive to sign on under palliative care and then transition to hospice care.
Mhm.
The
I
other
was just
thing,
thinking it seems so important. I'm so blown away that this is offered, not just as you said to the actual patient, but to the family.
yes,
And amazing, incredible services that I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would never imagine aromatherapy
yes,
being offered.
yeah,
And we all know that if you've ever used aromatherapy, just that smell, a new,
oh, yeah,
not that hospital medical smell
yeah,
in a room can
yeah,
make a tremendous difference for people that aren't even ill,
yeah,
let alone the patient themselves.
yeah. Very good point.
I'm amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
And I like what you said too, the difference in verbiage
yeah,
Mhm.
between palliative
yeah,
and end of life. That's a
yeah.
completely different connotation for
It
people.
it's very much so. It opens up so many other doors, so many other opportunities, because so many times we have clients under so much stress. They've lost the role of being the daughter or the son, and now they've become the full-time caregiver. Hospice allows that daughter or son or loved one to become the daughter again, to become the spouse again, rather than just the caregiver. And that's why I absolutely am so grateful we have these programs to be able to support everyone involved.
Yes.
So, the other, I mean, even when we talk about aromatherapy, we could even do healing touch, which,
Mhm.
a
Yep.
lot of people don't even know what that is. So,
Reiki, you're talking about?
Reiki,
Absolutely.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Mhm.
absolutely. And I'm not saying it's for everyone,
Sure.
but it gives the family and the client opportunities to try things that maybe traditionally were not tried in the past.
Mhm.
Because you don't just sign on with hospice. This is a transition that occurs with a client who may have had very aggressive treatment for years. And now they're transitioning towards end of life, but they're not quite there yet. So let's introduce palliative care and get them on that road to comfort
Do you have a
and support.
question about that?
Yes.
It has been my experience, and how would people know or learn about hospices that say they provide palliative care versus actually having a true palliative care program? Because there is a difference. Am I
Well,
correct on that?
actually, most hospice companies in the United States have palliative care also.
Okay.
Okay. And another thing I want to point out is hospice is not what I would consider in concrete. For example, once you sign on with palliative care or once you sign on with hospice, you can transition off of that program and go back to, let's say, home health care, another support system. And then when home health feels like the client is now transitioning again towards hospice, they can refer back to hospice.
Mhm.
So you can sign on and sign off. It it's not what we used to call the death sentence by any means.
That's just amazing because I don't think this is very much known out there.
You're right.
Um,
You're right.
And
I
Maryland,
really feel like this is such important information
it
Yeah.
is. And
because go on.
well, I was thinking that MaryAnn could explain to people what graduating is
Yeah.
because some people actually flourish on it and
Yeah. Yeah.
graduate.
You're right.
Mhm.
You're right. So here's a typical example of a client that I would go to visit and start the conversation. For example, when was the last time this family all sat at a dining room table and had a meal? And they would all look at each other and say, oh, well, now that you bring it up, it's been at least 3 years since we've all been sitting together. Dad, for example, hasn't been able to eat solids for at least a year now. That helps the family put time in perspective because they've been so involved with taking care of their loved one that they actually go into what I call a time warp. And they don't realize how long they've been in the caregiver role and providing care to this loved one who no longer even eats with the family anymore.
Right.
So that
Gosh.
helps me open up conversations about maybe we need to transition to a more supportive environment, whether it's bringing in palliative care, hospice care, keeping the client at home, maybe considering out of home placement if we have complete caregiver burnout. Maybe we have a family member that doesn't have the financial means to bring in home care anymore because it's so expensive to bring in that kind of support or respite. As a life care manager, I meet with my clients and I try to educate them about all the resources that are available to them so they have the proper tools in their toolbox to make appropriate decisions about the future of their loved one. And they may not be ready for signing on with hospice, but there's a lot of hospice companies that I work with who will send out someone to simply do a free education visit. They literally come out from a hospice company and they sit down with their family and they educate about all the benefits of hospice. And we're not talking about just psychosocial supports. We're also talking about medications that can be covered under the hospice benefit of Medicare that the family's been paying out of pocket for. They can have durable medical equipment brought into the home and create a room that looks more like a hospital supported environment in the home without looking like a sterile white room. Family pictures, the smells of the kitchen that they can still relate to, things of that nature. Supporting the caregiver and supporting the family with these equipment, hospital bed, walkers, safety in the bathroom. I mean, the benefits really do go on and on and on. And that's why I like a professional from hospice to visit families, whether they're in the hospital, whether they're at home, and just do this free education visit without having to sign on with hospice right away.
So, MaryAnn, if I can
Question.
interrupt you
Oh,
there. Yeah, so
yeah.
I got a full
I know.
question.
Yeah, there's so much information. Go ahead, Sasha.
I know.
Go
I
ahead.
love it.
Keep it
I'm,
coming. Keep it coming.
so, I'm thinking of a scenario. I have exactly an example for you because as Gabby and I talk, we're in the sandwich generation, right? So some
Yes.
of us have parents that are needing this care or maybe approaching needing this care. And I'll give you the exact example. A friend of mine moved in, her and her husband made that decision to move in with both her mother, his mother, and her father. Well, her father just passed. So now they're left with the two grandmas.
Okay.
That's a
And
commitment.
it's a huge commitment. And you know what?
Yes.
The her and her husband and their daughter are doing it on their own.
Wow.
And I just said,
Wow.
you guys, there's services. They're
Yeah.
having to change diapers. They're having
Yeah.
to bathe before going to work in the mornings.
Yes.
So
Yes.
can we speak to what does, the services, it seems like you are like the cog that can make all of this wonderful wheel of services
Yeah.
really come to life for a
Yeah.
couple like that in that situation. Would that be correct? Or
Yes, absolutely. So let me back up a minute because we didn't have a chance to talk about what life care managers actually do. So I've been in social work for well over 45 years. I've done a lot of work with oncology and have referred to many hospice companies and had the talk with these clients and family members. Life care managers, I like to call us walking encyclopedias. We meet with clients and family members to educate them about community resources, which could be something as simple as a nutrition program that a client can sign up with, especially if they're mentioning to you, I'm just so tired of cooking for myself. I just make a sandwich or I just open up a can of soup because I don't want to cook anymore. So we can introduce all the different nutrition programs. We can introduce what home care is. Home care can help with light housekeeping, transportation. They can help with personal care. They can assist with laundry, shopping, meal preparation. There are so many things that home care can help a family member, like what you're mentioning, take the load off the caregiver who now doesn't have a plate, but has a full platter of things they're trying to manage.
and without even the time to research what's
Yes,
even available for them. That was her
exactly.
biggest thing. She said, Sasha, I don't even know what's out there because we do what we have to do. We go
Yeah,
to work all day. We
yeah,
come home and guess what? It
Survival
picks up
mode
where
almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
they pick up where they left off because they know
Yeah.
that the two ladies have been left home all day.
yes,
Of course, the house is going to be in a certain condition depending on how their day's been.
yeah,
One of the ladies has dementia.
yeah,
So that's an adventure for the other lady. They're almost, taking care of each other, which is, I
yeah,
love the spirit of that.
yeah,
But we
yeah,
all know in practicality that can leave a
Yeah.
lot to be desired for those that then come in to do the caregiving and the heavy lifting.
absolutely. The other concern I have is client safety. So sometimes it's appropriate to refer to a home health company that might be able to bring in physical therapy to do an evaluation of the home for safety. Maybe we need grab bars. Maybe your loved one needs to be walking with a walker, even in the home, not just to go out with a walker. And if it comes from a professional, most clients are more receptive to accepting what they're hearing,
That's so true.
rather than the family saying, you really should be using a walker.
Oh my gosh, I can't. I'm telling you, I was telling Sasha last time we did this and just going through this process with my father. I have been a home care owner for 23 years. And for 3 years, he locked me out. He said,
Yes.
I can handle it. It's my business,
Yes.
my money, my caregivers. And I'm going, this is just gone awry. And it had gone awry for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And only at the very end did he say, in fact, he said, I guess you and your sister have taken over. And I said, yes. But then I said, but only until you're better and you can take it back. He goes, no, it's time.
Yeah.
But it took this man 3 years to get there.
It takes a long time because they don't want to give up any independence.
Mm-hmm.
And we have certain cultures that encourage that. The macho man, for example, I don't need help. I never, ever bring up the word help. I always try to say, let's bring in some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Or support. I use support.
Or even, put the blame on someone else. Just say, your daughter, for example, she could really use a night out. Why don't we get some respite in here? So there are ways that life care managers can reword things to make the client and the family members more receptive to assistance. So
That's
other
so
things,
important. Just that acceptance, just allowing someone else, because the next question then became, oh, well, I don't think they'll allow anybody through the door.
Yes.
So I think we should talk to that, because that's really exactly what Gabby said happened to her too.
Yeah.
What would you recommend in her situation? What could she potentially have done different? Not that it would have worked with her dad, but
Okay, so I'm going to give you a personal example. I have a mom who lives in Pennsylvania who just turned 95. God bless her.
Wow.
And I am fortunate that she lives by herself in her home. She still does her own shopping, her own cooking. She still drives. She promises me she does not get on the highway anymore. She only uses side roads. We put some things in place after negotiating a bit.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And the way we started, because I can do all this myself.
Of course.
I said, look, why don't we just start out with someone taking you to the doctor so that you don't have to do the side roads, which is going to take an hour. You can get on the highway with a home care person who can take you to the doctors and take good notes for you, and then relay that information back to me, because I would like to hear what the doctor had to say to you with your permission. So we tried that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And she was willing to do it. Well, over time, she said, well, do you think this woman would be able to help me clean the house? Because my mom wants a meticulous house. I said, yes, stop moving the bed by yourself so you can dust behind it, and get this woman to come in and do a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, mom cleans the house before she arrives.
Of course.
But it's another pair of eyes going in that then calls me and says, this is how your mom is doing. This is what I saw. And it's been a blessing. It's also been 6 years now, but it took me about 4 years to convince her to even consider getting someone in.
That right there, I think, is so important. You just said 4 years.
4 years.
Yes.
Now, but what a rich life she's leading.
Yes.
Because she's getting just that little bit of extra help, just that little bit of extra encouragement. And I love how you treated her like an adult.
Yeah.
Because I think that the other thing I see people is starting to talk to older people like they're stupid children, to be frank.
Yes.
And it's
Good point.
so humiliating.
Good
It's
point.
very, you know, these are intelligent people that just need a little bit of time for processing. That's all.
But I also do think that, I mean, I think a lot of people try not to talk to their parents like children. But it is how they receive it also.
Yes.
And I do like what you said, MaryAnn, about getting permission. I mean, asking for that because, and I'm guilty of not doing it. I just would get frustrated and
Mhm.
I guess not treat my parents like children, but just say, you know, I think, and it was all about what I think.
Yes.
And I think I just did it again. You get into that mode when you've been in a position of authority, like with your own children. So I can see how they perceive that as being treated like a child. And I was told, I'm a grown man, I'm
Yes.
accomplished.
Yes.
I had told Sasha the story of the last time my mom was out before she passed. And she had something called pulmonary arterial hypertension.
Yes.
And she was only supposed to live, when she was diagnosed 9 years before she died, she was only supposed to live about 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
And she was a Spitfire, and she's everybody calls me Energizer Bunny, like nothing compared to my mom. But anyway, when she came out the November before the March that she passed, she was so excited because my stepdad had bought her a scooter. It was a foldable kind, so we took it in the back of the car. And at that point in her process, she was having like a really energetic day, and then the next day she'd
Mhm.
make up for it. So it's just kind of going
Yes.
back and forth.
Yeah.
So she loved shopping. So my mom that was her sport.
Yes.
And she loved
Yes.
shopping. And even whenever she would come visit, I would have to take time off from work quite a bit because she would want to go shopping. And that would be like a 3 or 4 hour process with lunch included
Oh
and
yeah.
all of that. That was
It's
that
her
was
Of
her
outing.
day.
course.
Yeah.
TJ Maxx and Michaels, and I mean, so we got to go shopping, and so Dad went with us, and he goes sometimes he will go somewhere else, and anyhow, so we got the scooter in and everything, and then I was in the store and I was browsing with her, and every time I turned around, she was gone.
Yes.
And then so finally
Yes.
I found her again for like the third time. I lost her in the store at the jewelry counter, of course. And I scolded her. I was so frustrated because I said, Mom, I said, every time I'm browsing with you, and every time I turn around, you're gone, because she was
Right.
so excited to have that scooter because she could
Sure.
go all day long, with that
Yeah.
thing. And then she said, Gabriela, what did she say? I am not your child. Don't talk to me like that. Um, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then there was a lady that was standing by the counter also who was about my age, and she looked at me with this kind of knowing look. And I was just like, so I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mom." I said, "But I don't like to talk to the air." And she was
Yeah.
like, "Well, okay, I get that." But
Yeah. Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so excited to be able to move around. But it's like, I think once you become a parent, you instantly, just because you love them and you want to take care of them and you want what's best for them.
Sure.
And I was so excited for her that I was like, yeah, let's go. And then,
Yeah.
but you do end up talking to them like that. And I think that's something people need to be very conscious of.
Yeah.
And do you have any pointers for us to kind of be present with our family member as they get older, and like to remind yourself as you're even talking
Yeah.
and dealing with them?
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
There's so much what we call role reversal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when, the child becomes the parent. And when we have our own children, do not get a handbook. It's all trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing with caregivers who are family members, they're falling into those same traps, those same patterns that they probably did with their own children. And now they're doing it with their parent. And it's all that we know, So we will talk to them, unfortunately, down to them instead of equally with them. And I think the biggest pointer that I try to encourage family members to consider is speaking with them and maybe starting this conversation very early on, because I'm a firm believer of preventative medicine and stop dealing with crisis intervention, which is probably 80% of the calls that I get. Mom just fell again and she's back in the ER. What do we do? So, to answer your question in a roundabout way, Gabriela, I like to tell family members, when you're together during the holiday, during a happy time, and you're all at the Thanksgiving table, take the time to start asking each other very serious questions. For example, Mom, if something should happen to Dad, God forbid he fell, what is your plan? How can we assist you now in coming up with a way to deal with that? And do the research and do all the work before the crisis occurs. My busiest time of year is the holidays, because family members come to visit their loved ones. They walk in the door and they're like, oh my gosh, I thought you told me everything was okay.
Right.
There's the
Yes.
pile of mail sitting on the table. There's clutter. There's food that's growing food in the refrigerator.
We call
There's
those science experiments.
yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
I like to work with families that want this information when they're in this sandwich generation, because they're the ones that are going to have to be dealing with this in the future. Let's get
and how, and as you say, dealing with it, not just physically presently dealing with it, but financially dealing with it, which that's another subject for another day, but something that needs to be discussed, because as you mentioned, I definitely want to talk about later on about services that are available to most people in most economic situations. But again, that preparedness in not just let's start having these conversations. I love the around the holiday table when it's already a good time. You know, you're having fun, everybody's spirits are up.
And remember that this, like this podcast, I mean, anyone can listen to it, but it really is, it was started because we are the sandwich generation. Sasha is on her way to a volleyball tournament in Las Vegas, and I'm
with
at the
my daughter
tail.
and my mom in the car.
Yes.
So
And
I
and
love it.
and I remember those days not too long ago. I am seeing my youngest daughter off to college next this coming fall. She took a little break, but I mean, honestly, I was telling Sasha, because she hasn't had this joy yet, that parenting doesn't end when when you send them off to college. In fact, it truly has just begun in their 20s. Their 20s is, I think, has been the most challenging. And my oldest is now in her 30s, but I still have three in their 20s and one going to college. So it is, and it's a very long process. And I don't think it's ever over, but 20s are very challenging. And truly, I think that's where a lot of women in our generation are ending up being the sandwich, because we waited a little longer to have children. And our parents are living longer, and they're not just dropping dead, which I had talked to you before the show started about how my parents said they wanted to go. They didn't want to make plans. They didn't want to have the discussion. They just said, I want to drop dead. And it's like, well, that would be nice.
well,
my
and
mom,
also
my mom
our
and I have a
society.
morbid personality thing that we had going back and forth. I'm like, well, that would be great, Mom. But, fortunately she did. But then, but the reality is that not everyone is going to do that. So just keeping on the topic of hospice, could you maybe talk, I mean, because we talked about some family dynamics, which I think is very important. But when it comes to hospice, when do you try to help people understand that it is time? Yeah, what
Yeah,
qualifications and all of that.
I'd be happy to. So as I said, the family is together. You start asking questions. For example, do you have your paperwork in order for like an advanced directive for healthcare? Do I know what your wishes are at the time of crisis for resuscitation versus just letting yourself go naturally? And that can move into the whole hospice discussion. So typically, the most important question I ask a client when I do my assessment is, have you had, first of all, have you had a visit with your primary care physician in the past year? And a lot of people will say, well, no, it's been a little longer than that. So I encourage that. And if they are on a severe decline, I would like to have a family member or a client have an honest conversation with their primary care physician about their prognosis. I think that's the key here. And so many times, clients might be fearful of asking their primary care physician that question because they don't want to hear the answer.
And can I just add, do they also go into somewhat of a bit of shock when they hear that answer?
Okay.
And potentially some of that information isn't even retained
Yeah.
once they get that initial diagnosis. If they were by themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
that doctor could have rambled on for another half an hour and given amazing information.
That they
But
didn't hear.
I could imagine, yeah, for
Yeah.
myself, it would be so
Yeah.
shocking that,
Yeah.
potentially I wouldn't have even heard it in the first place.
Well, that's why it's so important for a lot of our seniors to go with someone that they trust to their doctor's appointments, because two more pairs of ears is so much better than just one pair of ears, to say nothing of the fact that they may not have seen their audiologist for 3 years and now they're not even hearing things anymore.
I mean, I didn't even think about that, but yes,
Yes,
they could be hearing, take,
10% of the conversation is,
yes,
yeah,
100,
yeah,
yeah, that's a good
yeah.
point.
So that is how we transition into the whole hospice arena, is what is the prognosis? Because then we'll know, should we be going hospice route with a 6 month or less prognosis? Should we be considering palliative care? Or should we just get supports in to help you improve your quality of life? And that's what life care managers do. We bring in resources to improve quality of life for everyone involved, not just the client, but for the family members. We
Do
can
you
go to those.
find, oh, I'm sorry.
It's
Um,
okay.
uh, do you find, and I did do some work in hospice for during the pandemic,
Mm,
because uh, I think we explained I own a home care company. I don't know, but I have to work on our introductions to this. But anyway, I have had a home care company for 23 years. And during the pandemic, all of a sudden, I was trying to staff cases, and caregivers were saying, I'm making $4,000 to stay at home.
yes.
And it had been 17 years at that point. So I looked at my husband, I go, well, it's been a nice ride, but
Yeah.
I think I got to go to work. And hospice has always, in home care anyway, has been one of my passions. We love
Sure.
hospice in home care because we have the nurse coming in, we have the bath aides coming in, got
Together.
all that support, not just for our client, but also for the family and for our caregivers, and also another set of eyes for me because I can't be everywhere. And
Sure.
so I like to know, it's nice to hear good reports about my caregivers, but sometimes they're not good, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
quality control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but in any event, what I did find working for two different hospice companies for almost 3 years as a liaison, really a lot of it, I think it's getting better, but there was still quite a bit of resistance from the doctors.
Yes.
They really, and and you talked about oncology, and that one was, they were the toughest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
What do you
they
mean
meant
resistance,
well.
Gabby? What do you mean
Resistance
resistance?
to having a conversation or possibly leading a patient that is not doing well
Mhm.
to
Okay.
have that hospice conversation, because my job as a liaison was actually to connect with providers
Sure. Sure.
and social workers and so forth to recommend my company
Mhm.
if somebody was hospice, what we called hospice
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And some of the doctors, it was just, and I get it, they want to heal. But there's a lot of, I don't know if it's misconception. I think there is still some education to be done with providers out there. And so, how would you counsel family members, for instance, like a son or a daughter who's on board and just needs that little nudge? Because a lot of older people will listen to their doctor.
Yeah.
Like that's their authority figure right there.
Yeah.
that's a great
Yeah.
So,
point.
Yeah. That's very,
what would
very
you
good
say
point.
to counsel the family members that are trying to get that endorsement from the primary care physician or the oncologist or whoever?
Okay. Great question. So, in my years working with a lot of oncologists, I have found that there are a vast majority of physicians that have a very, very hard time letting go. They actually feel like they're letting their patients down by not
That's
continuing,
interesting.
yeah, by not
Mhm.
continuing to treat
Right.
and to keep actually pushing for chemotherapy or radiation for a cancer patient, for example.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And when we have this heart to heart talk with the physician, which I have done in the past, because I want to know why you are not referring to hospice at this time. It's usually something personal within them
Mm,
that they have not been able to get through. So they will continue the treatment. Now, I'm going to be very transparent here. There's also money involved.
Mhm.
A physician is going to make money on a client that's continuing to get chemotherapy.
Right.
sure.
So there's that barrier.
Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm.
The
The
the other
incentivization to keep it going
to just keep it
to the
going.
bitter end, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And they may have had a bad experience with a hospice company in the past, and now it's, you know, on their blacklist. They don't
Okay.
want to consider another hospice company.
Hmm.
And we have in San Diego, for example, a vast majority of hospice companies, all
Yes.
with their own specialties.
Mhm.
So I like to, match my client with a specific hospice company that I think is going to be a good fit for
Mhm.
Hmm.
many reasons. Um, but we have to find a physician that would be willing to talk to the patient and the family member,
Mhm.
that would be willing to bring up hospice and refer to hospice, because any physician can refer to hospice.
Yep.
So if your primary care physician doesn't want to have that chat for whatever reason, then maybe we need to refer them to a gerontologist and
Mm,
someone who specializes in working with clients who are seniors. And they may have a different perspective on what's going on with the senior.
Mhm.
Their medications aren't working well anymore. They
yeah.
truly are failing. I mean, think about how long you've had a relationship at your age with your own PCP or your own dentist. You have so much trust with them, you don't really want to go to someone else. And they feel the same way about you as a patient. They may not want to say, I really think we're approaching the end here. I mean, it's hard. And I look at both sides of the coin here.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
if we can't find the primary care physician that wants to have that conversation, let's find another physician that will at least give you and your family members the tools again to make the right decisions, to make that.
And, you know, making it almost, as you say, they're used to that physician, they have that relationship, but
Sure.
a gerontologist is still the person in authority that they need, right? As that generation, especially, you know,
Yeah.
look to doctors as the be all and end all authority.
Oh, they're on a high pedestal.
So it's that figure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And granted, you know, they save lives, let's face it.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that there's that alternative to go to that understands the situation
Yeah. And
because of
then
their expertise, right? They
ultimately,
are experts in old people.
yeah. And then ultimately, and it is rare, but ultimately, if you can't, if correct me if I'm wrong, but we only had a couple of these in 3 years where the physician refused to write an order. All hospices have medical directors.
Yes. Yes.
So they can have a nurse go out and evaluate to make sure that person is hospice appropriate.
Yes.
And then they can write the order. And like I said, it only happened a couple of times where I had a physician stonewall and I just didn't understand. We just couldn't understand why. And this person was literally within that 2-week window.
Oh,
You know, and it was like we just could not understand. And so then, yes, and I think for the most part, am I correct, MaryAnn, that the medical directors of the hospices are reluctant to do it because they don't want to professionally step on the toes in judgment of that primary care provider.
you're absolutely
But
right.
you know, when you see the situation and you just cannot for the life of you figure out why this order
Yeah.
can't come in,
Yeah.
it's very frustrating. And I mean, I experienced like high anxiety over it
Yeah.
because I saw the person, I'm like, they need somebody now. The family needs somebody now.
Yes. Yes.
Which brings me back to what something you said, which is just hoping that more and more people get comfortable with the idea of hospice not being a death sentence, but being a support and not getting to that crisis moment, but really having that as I I think when you and I, for instance, when you and I talked before the show and we were talking about my dad who passed and just me kind of knowing what was happening. A lot of people don't know what's happening. They haven't had that experience, and it's not that it was easy for me to deal with my own
He's
father's
frozen.
death, but I knew what would happen. Yeah.
Okay, Gabby, we just missed you for a few seconds.
Okay. So I was just saying we talked before the show. And I talked to you just kind of like being in the biz, I guess, for all these years. I did lose my father and it was devastating, but I knew what was happening. And I kind of knew what to expect. So I guess my question is like with families, I think we're doing more encouragement of getting educated, having hospice really become part of the medical treatment road, I guess you should say. It's just the
Yes.
final, but not excluding hospice.
Mhm.
I think the more education that happens with our generation and the more comfortable, the better. And having those conversations much earlier, as
Mhm.
you were suggesting.
Yes.
Um, Now we talked about like kind of like physically what that is. I guess on along the lines of that with families, is there anybody that has stood out to you in particular that a particular case that you'll never forget, maybe of a resistance and then an acceptance, or I don't want to guide you with that,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
like a story, a brief story that you could tell us about a family that maybe had some difficulty and then what their end result was.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll probably make this more personal because it has happened time and time again with clients.
Mhm.
But several years back, I would go back to see my mom and dad in Pennsylvania, try to get there 2 to 3 times a year. And over time, I started to see my dad decline.
Yeah.
I mean, he was already close to 80. And then he took a very bad fall. And that's why I say it's so important to do this preventative work, to get professionals into your home to take a look at how we can improve safety in the home, if that's the long-term goal. Because I love
Yep.
keeping clients home as long as possible because they're happier there as long as they're safe. So dad takes a bad fall. I go out to see them. They did not want to do any kind of surgery. They just thought he was a high risk. And over time, dad deteriorates. And you're talking to your loved ones over the phone. And then finally, I had to ask my mom, I really need to know what's going on with dad. I see that he's losing weight. I see that he's getting a little more depressed and more withdrawn every time I go visit. And it might be time to start talking to dad about what he wants his end of life to look like. So, it's very hard when you're a professional. And then you have to also put on the daughter cap. So, as I circle back with this whole story from the beginning of this podcast, I think the most key element is to get a professional, a third party, to come in and do that educational visit about hospice so that it's not on the daughter, it's not on, a specific family member, it's on a third party.
Did you
And
get
family
pushback for
members
that,
are
MaryAnn?
more.
Did you get pushback because you were the one
I
doing that in your family, or?
Actually, I probably was very fortunate about the way I introduced it because at the time, you're going to laugh at me. My mom's best friend was going through the same thing with her husband. And
Okay.
I said, Mom, why don't we get hospice in to talk to you? And then maybe with that information, you can also talk to your best friend about her situation.
Oh, then
Mom
she
was all
becomes the
over it.
authority again.
You
Wow.
got
Yes.
it.
She's
Don't take
championing.
it. Yep.
Yes.
Don't
Yep.
take anything away. Don't drive it yourself. Put it on someone else. And it worked. And
Of course. Yeah.
once my mom heard the benefits of hospice, she
Mhm.
wasn't getting the pressure from my brothers anymore. No, keep fighting. Dad's got more. Well, they hadn't seen him in 3 years. They had no idea what was going
Sure.
on.
Of course. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a family member that's the one that's going to do all the visits and all the work. We know that happens with the sandwich generation, but you get
Yes.
everybody else's input. They have a lot to say, even though they're so removed.
Yes.
That's how I worked around getting mom to have a visit. We didn't have to sign on with hospice. We just wanted them to come in and do a visit. You don't need a doctor's order for that.
Nope.
So
No.
there's your in. It takes the
Yeah.
load off the family members
And
too.
that's
Wonderful.
amazing. That is great. I mean, and I didn't even, that just occurred to me after even working
Yeah.
in the hospice arena for a
Yeah.
little while, because I still see clients that I see, and I do have family resistance. They
Yes.
don't want it to be the end
Yes.
yet.
Yes. Yes.
And so to them, going on hospice is the end.
Yes.
And it's not, I mean, and
And
what I
talking about
do
that, sorry
say
to
to
interrupt that palliative care that you were talking
well,
about,
the
that
palliative care for
is so
sure.
important.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, especially if they're in pain. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
hate to see that. And I explain it to them this way. Palliative care is a discipline, just like gerontology,
Mhm.
like internal medicine. It's a discipline, that's a specialty. And so your internal med doc, it's like it's even like with mental health. You go to a psychiatrist for medication. I
Sure.
mean, your
Sure.
primary care physician can prescribe things, but if you have deeper issues, you need to go to a psychiatrist because they know how those drugs work. They know how they interact. It's a specialty.
Yeah.
And the same thing like with palliative medicine, for people to really understand, that is a specialty that takes into account gerontology, pain management, all of the things that are involved with kind of end of life
And
issue.
the mixing of
Sure.
all of those medications that gets
Yes.
so
Yeah.
confusing,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
that in itself can be a science experiment to
Well,
try and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is.
understand.
And then, I
Yeah.
mean, I have clients that'll go on hospice. First thing that hospice will do is a medication review.
Sure.
And they will, I've had clients on 17 medications before.
Yes.
And it's like,
Gosh.
oh my God, it's called polypharmacy. It's a real thing.
It's
And they
huge.
come and they clean out the cabinets that have expired and all kinds of medications so
Hmm.
that those
Hmm.
go, and then they get them down. And what I do love about hospice is that they do get those medications down to what is necessary. No
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
no more treatment medications or anything like that, but what's necessary. So to keep you comfortable, if you're on
Hmm.
a heart medication or
Hmm.
whatever, I mean, but they'll look at which ones are absolutely necessary and they'll take them off of the other ones. And I actually had a client years ago that graduated from hospice because when we got him on
Hmm.
service with us, I did request another medication review because he had been on for a while. And so we did another medication review and they took out several things and all of a sudden he perked up.
Yes.
And he perked up. He
Yes.
still needed our care, but he perked up. And I think he lived another 3 years
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
before he was back on hospice and passed away. But yeah, but
But that
people
would never have been found out without that initial
without that
visit
review.
and that consultation, right? That
Yeah,
review.
exactly. So yeah, so I just I want to kind of honor everyone's time here. MaryAnn, do you have any other words of wisdom to offer us about
Oh,
hospice and
she could talk till
families?
next
I,
week, I think. I'm
Yes.
I,
I'm fascinated.
I, we could pick this up again. There's so many different dynamics involved with the
Mhm.
transition of full care versus what I want to say quantity versus quality. And that's what we really have to keep in mind when we're working with clients and their loved ones, because so many times we see totally burnt out caregivers who don't have quality of life anymore because they've been a caregiver for so long and they don't see any light at the end of a tunnel, because as so many clients turn around and say to me, I didn't sign up for this for 10 years. I thought I'd only be doing care for 2 years. And
Yes, that's
it,
such a great point.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So let's keep that in mind too. Quality versus quantity is very, very, very important here.
Yes. And so with that being said,
Well,
I
we
appreciate
have
you
to have MaryAnn
so
back, I'm afraid.
much.
It's just
Yes, I do appreciate, and I would love to have you back on with us just because your immense experience. Obviously, we were talking about hospice. Sasha and I restarted the podcast obviously last time with just talking about the death of my father, and
Yes,
you touched on so many things there, but everybody's experience is very unique,
sure.
and that's what I like to remind people of, that it is the end of life experience that I just had. It was it's tough. It's not easy, but the hospice, of course, that they did have in place made it so much easier.
Yeah.
And then just to remind people, we're gonna have a talk on grieving. So we're kind of
Hmm.
dissecting this
Hmm.
experience that I had, because I've been in the senior care workspace since 1987. So next year it'll be 40 years. um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I I knew this would happen, but you don't know it's going to happen until it happens. I
Yes.
knew that once I had actually now my mother, she passed away at night. just like she wanted to.
Mm,
Suddenly, that had its own grief
sure.
response, even though we knew it was coming eventually. And then my dad's was a little more drawn, it was more drawn out, but not a long, long time. So it was two different experiences. So what we thought we would do was, even though it's not as uplifting and it's not going to be as much fun as some of our other topics, but we would just go ahead and explore just kind of all aspects of end of life. So
Mhm.
we will be doing one on grief. We're going to be
Good.
doing one on settling the estate and like hopefully getting that stuff set up ahead of time, having these conversations ahead of time. All
Yes.
the things that I kind of encountered and really now feel very enriched actually, because I've been talking to people about these things all these years, and just out of really book knowledge and anecdotal knowledge, but not really have living through it myself with sibling and stuff, family dynamics and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So we are going to explore that, and I'd love to have you back. I can offline send you just kind of a list of the topics that we're going to touch on, and whichever ones you want to participate in, we would love that.
Thank you.
And just thank you so much for joining us and
Yes, thank you both. And I
becoming part of the
apologize.
Brazen Maven Society.
I love it.
Um,
I love it.
and just talking to everybody about a very precious time in
Yeah.
life. I think I always mouthed that. I told people that it was a sacred time of life, but I really experienced that. And it was because of hospice
Yeah.
that we were able to really see it as a very sacred time for
Absolutely.
all of us. And with that being said, anything you want to add, Miss Sasha?
Oh, no, I'm just thank you both for putting up with my delayed travel uh, issues here.
No
And
No
problem.
worries.
Marianne, thank you so
Problem.
much for joining us. You are a wealth of knowledge, as I knew you would be. That's why I wanted you to be our first guest,
Thank you.
because
Thank
what
you.
you do is so pivotal in pretty much everything related to the
Mhm.
senior space right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
as you said, the you are a walking encyclopedia. People, I'm so fortunate to
That,
know you,
yeah.
Thank
and
you.
we can't
And
wait to have you
then
back.
I do
I'd
want
love
to
that.
add that I am learning how to do all this, ladies. But I will be including, MaryAnn was kind enough to provide me with her link and then some other resource links. And I will put those in the show notes. So anyone who needs a little guidance can check those links out. They can check out MaryAnn's link as well, which I like. It's very concise and inviting. Yeah, we'll see you guys next time, and I will talk to you offline, MaryAnn, about maybe doing some other shows.
That sounds great. Thank you for
Okay,
having
Thank
me
you both.
today.
thank
Thank you.
you. Good to see
See you
you.
soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye.